beginning and we start recording. So I wanted to start today by welcoming you all and thank you for joining us. I am really excited and delighted to be here and to obviously start this first sort of event with Charlotte and Benjamin. So I met Charlotte Hanking and Benjamin Freud. So Benjamin first, and then obviously I was lucky to meet Charlotte, and we connected through LinkedIn, and then through the podcast I interviewed them both for the Flourishing Education podcast. And really the reason we sort of decided to create this event is to obviously share their framework, but the essence of what we're going to be doing here for the workshop is co-creation, is coming together to sort of co-create. So I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm gonna hand over to Benjamin and Charlotte, who are going to talk us through what they're doing with us today.
So hi everyone, it's really nice to see you, to see some familiar faces, some new faces. We are going to start off with the Miro board. So I put the link in the chat, and I will share my screen to show you what you should ostensibly see. So we'll start here. And so we'd just like to take maybe a little bit of time, just a few minutes, just to kind of get settled into the space. We've got a lot of interactive sessions today, a lot of interactive parts. So maybe we could just, if you guys can access it, just say hi. Where are you from? Where So we have Prab from Oxfordshire, and Emmanuel is in Spain, Alex in the UK. Spell that correct. And at any point, if you feel like unmuting yourself, you can. There's no problem at all. Alex, Nadia, I never know where you're from, actually, in terms of where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Brussels. I'm sorry, I can't. My Miro doesn't want to open, so I can just say it here. Yeah.
Someone put Nadia from Brussels.
I've been here for 2 years now.
All right, we'll start with it. And then I like to say maybe just a few words perhaps on why it is that you're here. What motivates you to learn about WISR? What motivates you to want to co-create about WISR? What is it maybe that you might have a few thoughts? And Maggie, I just sent you the link to the Miro board. Oh, actually, I'll put it in the link.
Thank you.
So to connect with like-minded individuals, integrating regenerative education. Read a bit about and talked to Benjamin Charlotte. Looks interesting. Well, we hope we'll make it interesting, and we hope we can do this all together. Actually, I'll stop this. And then as we wrap up, actually, I'm gonna stop the meeting part and just let you kind of be free a little bit. Let's unleash. And as we talk about recentering and something that looks interesting, well, we're going to try we're going to go over here towards a little bit of a session agenda. And so we're doing a welcome just to kind of get a feel of where we are. Please feel free to talk, open comments, whatever resonates, whatever works. And then I'm going to leave space right now for for Charlotte to perhaps tell us a little bit the story of WISR and where it came from, and maybe start to look into some imaginings and what it might look like. And as we envelop this story, we'll go into wonder and interaction. I don't think we can do justice to sustainability and regeneration, but we can start to have maybe an inkling of what that might be. But the wonder and interaction will be an entry point into WISR, and then we'll unfold afterwards, looking at what, but also perhaps leave space to look at sustainability and regeneration as that comes forth. And the one thing I'd like to say is there's a lot of possibilities here. Who knows what will happen? We've got this planned out. It could go well. There could be some technical issues, but I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback and input. So I'm going to stop sharing now and leave it over to Charlotte.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's probably just worth pausing to introduce ourselves. Who am I? I'm Charlotte, and in case you're thinking it's a weird coincidence that Benjamin and I are both in Thailand, we are actually married and we work together. So how many relationships across the world can claim to do that harmoniously? So we're quite proud and excited about that. So I've been in education for 21 years. I can't believe that. I've held all sorts of positions. Currently, I'm a homeroom teacher, and I went full 360, went back to my roots in the classroom, but I'm also a part-time PhD student. And so a lot of the ideas, the research, the concepts within the WISR framework come from the most cutting-edge research in the field of sustainability education right now. So we're excited to share. Benjamin, do you want to say a little bit about your background, just very quickly?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I know many of you. So I'm Benjamin Freud. I've traveled all around the world in terms of being a nomad, brought around by my mother who worked for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My background's in consulting, actually, and I switched into education about 10 years ago. And I'm really interested in a lot of things. And I'm also, Charlotte and I are co-founders of Coconut Thinking.
And so Coconut Thinking, you may be familiar with on LinkedIn. We do share a lot of our ideas connected to WISR and other educational issues on there. So I'll just see we've got Matt just coming into the call. Welcome, Matt. Hi.
Sorry, I'm late.
No problem, no problem. I can see you're in a classroom at the moment. Is that right?
Yes, the joys of teaching. I was just having to deal with one of my kids, so I was just like, right, deal with that, get on.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. I'm going to share a little bit about our journey then. So I'm going to speak probably for about 10 minutes, and then I'll hand back over to Benjamin with the Miro board, and that's where we're all going to explore, co-create together. So this is the WISR framework. You may be familiar with this if you've seen it on LinkedIn, and you can see that WISR stands for those 4 flows. We're calling them flows. They're not parts. They're all connected, interconnected, enmeshed, entangled, and they are all important parts of what we see as sustainability education, but also it's much more about a mindset of relationships. And we're going to spend some time now going through the 2 components, wonder and interaction. And so this image here, just to ground us, obviously with the natural world, to get us looking at water, to get us thinking about flows. We were originally thinking of ideas of anchor, to anchor us in this place on this Zoom meet right now, but we felt that anchor was too stable and static. And what we're hoping with the WISR model, with the WISR framework, and with our conversation today, that we're going to be dynamic. And that's because we see relationships as being the key concept for our framework, those relationships with ourselves, with others, and the world around us, trying to avoid separations, binaries, divides, but seeing ourselves as one big swirling enmeshment of relationships. And Benjamin, you might like to speak to this just for a moment, or I can.
This is really this idea that and this was inspired by Rosie Braidotti, the post-humanist philosopher, who said that, or she wrote that producing knowledge is stuff of the world. We're accountable to multiple constituencies, and constituencies means anything: human, non-human, living, not living. Everything is production of knowledge. And so this is a real starting point here for WISR, because it really shifts our mindset away from, of course, teacher to student imparting of learning, but also thinking that the production of knowledge isn't about individuals themselves, by themselves separated, but it is within a multiple perspectives, a multiplicity of perspectives. And this is what she calls constituencies, all these different points that produce knowledge.
And so post-humanism is very much where our WISR framework comes from. So I'm going to speak just for a moment about how did this come about? Because I think if we understand how things evolve, that helps to really understand our ways of thinking and our intentionality. So as a classroom teacher, I found the Samir model quite useful. And is anyone on the call familiar with the Samir model? Do you want to like put a thumbs up or something? No? Okay. So as you can see, we have 4 letters. It's an acronym. The Samir model was developed to provoke educators to really think about how they're using digital technology in the classroom. So you can see at the top there, we have substitution. So is the teacher using technology as a direct substitute? That's not ideal. That's just replicating a textbook. And so for me as a classroom teacher, it made me think it was just something small, the Samir model. Okay, am I substituting a textbook for digital technology? If I am, that's not good practice, because it's really not about being creative or content production. I'm simply substituting a textbook for a computer. So there are some great things out there. I mean, I use Khan Academy, for instance. That's an example of substitution. Khan Academy is a maths program where students can type in their responses to questions, but really it's substitution for a textbook. So as you can see, as you work through the model, redefinition, the R at the end there, is really what we should be aiming for in our classrooms. We should be allowing for the creation of new tasks. And so when I think of how I'm using digital technology in the classroom with my students, I'm really thinking, when I get those iPads out, am I redefining the learning experience with technology, or am I simply substituting, or am I simply modifying? And so for me, as a classroom teacher, this is a really handy tool to provoke my thinking about how I am facilitating experiences with technology. And I always come back to this. So this is a teaching tool that I found really useful. So 1 year ago, I was reading all of the headlines about climate change, about the destruction of the environment, and I was feeling quite stressed out. And I thought, what can we do? What can I do to play a part in trying to make changes, positive changes for our world? And I thought about this Samir model, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if teachers had some sort of handy reference guide or an acronym or something that helps them to think about why they are designing lessons and how that might support sustainability education. So that's where it came from. And it actually was during the school holidays where I had more time on my hands. So that's an example, I think, of how having time to wonder really supports the creative thinking process. So WISR began like this, very much using the Samir model, very much thinking about separate parts, working their way up to regeneration, which is seen as like, oh, that's the ultimate goal for us all. But I wasn't happy with this model and shared it with Benjamin. And we were in Chiang Rai. This is a rainforest that we were walking through in Chiang Rai. And for those of you who may not know Chiang Rai, it is northern Thailand. And I was thinking, well, how do we really conceptualize the relationships that we have with everything around us? Having separate bars just isn't right. That's fine for technology, but when we're thinking about seeing ourselves as part of the natural world, we can't separate ourselves. So having bars doesn't really support the way we think about how we relate with the world around us. So from there, the WISR model turned into a Fibonacci sequence. And you can see that that spiral is starting to evolve. And we have our almost quadrants, our 4 separate parts. But we still weren't happy with this. And we actually spoke to a few of our trusted colleagues across the world, and they felt that this still spoke to the separations that actually cause problems in our world today. And the Fibonacci spiral in the middle perhaps speaks to growth. And we're not looking for growth here. We're not looking for moving from one flow into the next, gradually getting bigger and better. And so that is how we conceptualize the WISR spiral, showing that they are all interconnected, showing that one isn't more important than the other, that actually all 4 of these parts are valuable and useful in their own way, but also connected to the others. So we're going to start talking through wonder right now. So let's pause for a moment and look at these beautiful redwood trees in California. Benjamin tells me they are the oldest living thing in the world today. They're about 2,000 years old and they're huge. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced a redwood tree, the beauty, the majesty, the wisdom of these trees. And so this is really where we're landing. We're thinking about how we grow from the inside, and that's really what wonder is all about. Learning is engagement with nature through an expression of awe, enchantment, mystery, and curiosity. So I'd like to invite you all now to just pause. Have you, I'm sure you have, experienced that sense of wonder in your life? Preferably in the natural world, because that's where we're routing our Zoom call tonight. Have you experienced that sense of maybe your heart beating fast, or a gasp of air when you see something that just completely transforms your senses in some way? Maybe it's a full bodily experience. And so really, if there's one thing that we can all do across the world to support and repair our relationships with the natural world, it is to cultivate and nurture that sense of wonder.
And I just going to jump in here in terms of the difference. We thought about the difference between a provocation and wonder. And really, we thought that a provocation was the teacher creates an experience that is meant to provoke, and it still goes teacher to student. Whereas wonder, because nature does grow from the inside, these massive trees were little saplings, but with their interaction with the water and the soil and the light and each other, they grew into massive trees that go all the way to the sky. And so the difference between provocation and wonder is that wonder is allowing the space for that sense of enchantment to come, rather than provoking that feeling.
And so this isn't about questioning. This isn't about curiosity. This isn't about saying, well, how did the spider spin that beautiful web that connects the trees and is huge and intricate and beautiful? It's not about thinking. This is about simply being mindful and feeling a sense of awe. So it is that moment before we start to question. That's really what we are speaking to with wonder in our framework. And so what I always like to think about is we can't develop a sense of responsibility and care for something if we don't really appreciate it. And so with the WISR model, what we would like students and teachers and school leaders to really consider is, how can we cultivate a sense of wonder so that students feel connected and they build a relationship with the natural world? And wonder is, because it is an embodied experience, because it can be transformative, wonder is something that everyone can do. I'm going to move into interaction now. This may sound like the word interaction, and that is how the WISR framework originally started, because once we have experienced a sense of wonder, we actually can experience that from inside. We could be watching an amazing film clip, a documentary of a volcano erupting, or maybe we hear beautiful sounds of nature. Or something that I remember doing when I was a teacher one year is having shells in the classroom, and that feeling of touching a shell and listening to the sounds of the sea. This is all wonder. But this can take place within the classroom, but there comes to a point where you have to actually go and physically experience the natural world. And so this is what we're trying to communicate with interaction. It's about having a first-hand experience with the natural world, fully sensing it with our noses, our ears, our eyes, maybe the temperature, the climate around us, thinking about the weather. This is where we really see ourselves as part of nature. We are nature. And so interaction is a physics term to really describe how we are all relating with each other at one time. Interaction is about an individual stepping into a situation. And if we want to see ourselves as part of the natural world, we have to think more of intra rather than inter. And so for interaction, we see this as learning is empathy with nature as a result of immersion, reciprocal communication, agency. And so when we look at this beautiful scene behind, we can see that we have starfish, algae, rocks, stones, probably all sorts of living creatures floating around here. So they are all interacting, they're all relating with each other. They are not a solo entity that exist on their own and they enter this experience. They are all interacting. It's dynamic and it's circular. So this is for classroom teachers to think about, well, let's get the kids outside, let's get them touching, holding, smelling, seeing, interacting. I think this is probably the term that people are most familiar with, sustainability. And this is where we start to think about learning as guided by a set of ethics, which emphasize balance of energy and resources in nature. So this is really about the part of protecting, seeking fairness and a just world. And so this is where our ethical behaviors come in, looking to care for others, looking to be compassionate. And regeneration, learning as honouring and expressing the unique essence of every member of nature. Benjamin, do you want to say a little word about this image that's on our screens now?
Yeah, this is the mycelium, the fungi that really inhabits most of the soil. And if you take it, I think it's something like 80% of the weight of the soil, and creates networks throughout that of communication, of feeding, that really allows all life forms to live. And we might go a little bit fast in terms of sustainability and regeneration again, because we don't want to disrespect those words, because they are so complex, and we might not have the time. But yeah, this is fungus.
Okay, so this brings us back to our WISR framework. So we know that this is not going to be for everyone. We know that this is niche, this is quite cutting edge, but we hope that this framework will serve as a provocation for educators so that they can start to think of ways, just like with the Samir model, they can think of ways about how to support children's relationships with the natural world. And so they can be thinking, right, I'm now going to be thinking about cultivating a sense of wonder, maybe through a specific learning experience, but also they might be thinking about allowing wonder to arise quite naturally through experiences with the natural world. Interaction, being outside, physically experiencing different species. And I'm going to, at that point, invite you now to start thinking about how we might imagine and co-create, just like these amazing ants are doing, building bridges, connecting, forging relationships. And we're going to go back to the Miro board in just a moment. I just want you to think about, in terms of relationships, they're not always what we can see, and they're not always what we can hear and smell and touch. There are many relationships around us that we might disregard because of the busyness of life, or because of certain senses or capacities that might privilege. So a lot of what we talk about in coconut thinking is how the cognitive often takes over. We are very interested as humans to go and save the planet and to find solutions and to set up recycling programs and so on. But we're not really speaking to that. Obviously, that's an important part of sustainability and those ethical behaviours. But we really want to encourage people to think about be more mindful of those relationships that are all around us that we often miss because we privilege certain ways of thinking and sensing. And that's going to be an important something to return to in just a moment. And this is going to be something new for Benjamin and myself. We are going to co-create in quite a creative digital way. And this is an example of something that we are going to co-create using the WISR framework as inspiration, bringing our whole selves and our lived experiences into this Zoom call and honouring the essence of every participant. And at that point, Benjamin, back to you.
There you go. Unmuting helps. Let me take you back to the Miro board here. And if you could come and see this part of wonder, I'll try to call you to me if I can figure out how. So if I can get everyone here, if you could see the part that says wonder, where it says leave an artifact. And many of you, thank you, have already started to put in the chat some of the things that really you experienced wonder, this embodied experience, this excitement, this holding your breath. And so I'm going to invite you here, and this is where it's going to get maybe a little bit dicey, but maybe, we'll see what we can do. Maybe putting in an artifact here, putting in something rather than words, although words can be there, maybe a picture. Maybe you can go online very quickly and download something on your desktop and pop it in there, or maybe draw, or maybe find an emoji or something to put in here that really says wonder. So for in my case, what I was thinking about when we designed this was the first time I went to Arches National Park. And Arches National Park is in Utah, and it was a place where I was driving around, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And it looked something like this, if it'll load. And I just walked through the space, and it was just absolutely mesmerizing and free, no trails, just being able to go and climb some of these rocks. So I'm going to add this to the space, and I'm inviting you, or draw, or if it's a little bit difficult or challenging technically, maybe you can hold it up and I can take a screenshot, anything you want to add an artifact, or again, draw. And if anybody wants any help, I can help out with that as well. Oh yeah, got my scorpion. And if it's not in the space, that's okay too.
Benjamin, how do you upload a picture?
Just drag and drop it.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks.
Just drag and drop the picture onto the screen. If you have access to a pen, you could just draw, even a Post-it note if it's just easier, or a link. If somebody wants to mention something, I could also bring it up. There we go. Gorgeous. Oh gosh, who put that? The beautiful, is that a sunset, a sunrise?
Yeah, that's me. That's in my backyard.
Oh, wow. There you go. Oh, wow. What is that? Is that a desert somewhere? Where's that?
That's the empty quarter between Oman and Abu Dhabi.
Amazing. Wow. That must go on from, oh, wow. Let's see what empty quarter. So when were you there by any chance?
I was living in the Middle East for 7 years, and I used to spend a lot of time. I used to take a lot of students down to Oman for Duke of Edinburgh Award and things like that. So outdoor ed, and I just fell in love with it. I spent a lot of time. I camped from Yemen to Muscat with my kids, and
Wow.
part of it was across the empty quarter. Amazing. It's the only time I would say I genuinely felt rewilded, I suppose, that it was really raw nature, where things could go wrong, actually. It was a very good feeling, retrospectively, with hindsight.
That's gorgeous. Well, I invite you to add in Post-it notes or little words, or however you feel. Maggie, tell us a little bit about one of these pictures that you have.
Well, so the one on the lower left, the one of the sunset,
Mm-hmm.
I am just so fortunate to live in a place where I can see the sunset and to have a husband who's a photographer.
Mm.
So we kind of have a ritual where in the evening we check on the sunset and we never miss it. And so it's not only inspiring to us and to our sense of wholeness and feeling intra-connected, but it is also part of who we are as a pair.
Wow.
Yeah, and by the way, my family roots are in the Dolomites, so I'm just loving this picture.
Mhm. That's amazing.
And yes, it looks very much like the territory that my ancestors inhabited and still do. My relatives still live there.
And so now, did you put the Dolomites there? It's gorgeous. Oh.
Yes. So we go once a year to ski there, and I'm always humbled and honored. And I mean, there's just this feeling of, like smallness, but in a beautiful way. And this connection to that just looks divine. It looks majestuous. It just looks so beautiful.
Yeah.
Nadia, my relatives, thank you. They run the ski hotels.
Oh, I used to. Which one?
Near Civetta. If you
Okay.
ski that mountain. Yeah.
So what I find fascinating here is a couple of things. First of all, we can't always go to the Dolomites. We can't always go to the empty quarter. We can't always be in Arches. And certainly we have to think of some of the communities and schools that don't necessarily have access to the outdoors, and how we are fortunate to be able to access sometimes from the parks. So this is something that we're very conscious of. So wonder is also something that, although it's connection with the natural world, we want to make sure that it can also happen in the classroom. And so by this, it also means perhaps having that tactile experience, having the ability to manipulate a shell or a rock or a piece of wood, but really looking at it, observing it, doing whatever we can do. Maybe it is a potted plant that grows. Maybe it is looking outside. Maybe it's a video. Maybe it's something, but it is certainly opening the space for the learning to happen from within. And this hopefully allows us to access no matter where we are. But Maggie, you brought up about the fact that it was one of you and so forth. So I'm going to bring you guys over to, if I can have you guys go towards the left, towards the right, other left, towards the Great Barrier Reef. Let's see if I can bring you out to myself. Over here to the Great Barrier Reef. Have you guys made it to the right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So the Great Barrier Reef, we're going to talk about relationships now and intra-action, all the things that connect. So the first thing I'm going to ask you here, and I'm going to try to get a little bit fancy here. So this could, of course, and part of it is this messiness here, but let's see if I can make this work. So I'm going to also share, if I can do it, if you can hear it, the sounds of the Great Barrier Reef. Can you hear that at all through my mic?
I can't.
Okay.
No, I can't.
Okay, well, that's okay. So over here, while I try to make this work, I'd like to have you go maybe through these pictures, these 4 pictures of the Great Barrier Reef, and ask you maybe with these post-it notes to write what's going on here. What's going on in these 4 pictures of the Great Barrier Reef? Can you hear it now?
Yes,
There we go.
loud and clear for me. Oh, yeah.
So just put on like some some of your thoughts of what might be going on here, and just pop it in with the Post-it notes.
So we've tried to make this immersive by thinking about what we can see and what we can hear. For interaction, you would actually be out interacting with the natural world, but obviously that's difficult for us here on Zoom. So we've done our best to try and awaken the senses using our Zoom capacities. Sounds have just gone, Benjamin.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the sounds. I don't know if it's just me though.
See if I can do it better. Is that better?
Yes.
So we're really thinking about our powers of observation here. What can we see? What can we hear? And if anyone has been in this environment, how might this have felt? Any scuba divers on the call? We were really thinking about drawing out language to ground us all in this moment.
So we've got beautiful natural colors. Kind of got some, I think. Some of these are disappearing. Let me see if I can get rid of this white thing. Looks nice, but it's in the way. That might be better. Symphony of colors, playful movements, turtle gliding. So as you finish, as you think about this, I'm going to invite you to come to the second frame on the right and think about what relationships do you notice? What are the relationships? So there's feeding, yes, there's bubbling. What's going on in terms of how sounds, the image, what the relationships that might be there? I invite you as well to do the Post-it notes with this. Let me get rid of this blue button. I think I can see. Relationships to turtle in the water, coral, sunlight, water, fish. Sunlight is necessary for the fish to live. They're in relationship with one another. The sun is in relationship with the diver, of course, to provide light. Naturalism. Oh yeah, the food for the turtle, this ecosystem. The idea here is to really start to notice not just what's in the picture, but how everything is related. If we were in the water like this diver, what is going on here? The pressure, the water, everything that's here. And as you finish up, I'll invite you to come down to the third frame, which is what relationships don't you notice? And in this one, I'm going to maybe perhaps prompt a little bit, and maybe perhaps prompt a little bit for interaction to think about if we were to get away from the Zoom and be inside the water, we hear it, we feel it, we see the relationships with the turtle and the coral reef, the light, the food. But what we don't see, for instance, is perhaps the fact that the climate disaster that is going on. Oh, wrong music. Let's turn that off. Sorry. The climate disaster that is going on. The fact that there are certain systems now that are destroying and killing the Great Barrier Reef. Perhaps it's about the colonial heritage of that part of the world. Perhaps this turtle is endangered. All the things that we don't see necessarily, but are in relationship here and are part of the story. Life, death, everything that's part of the story that we might not necessarily notice at first, but are still part of this assemblage. Circle of life, the bleaching. This is a snapshot moment in time, no obvious systems connection. There is no obvious system connection. That's absolutely true. But we still know there is a story there. It is a snapshot in itself has a past and a future. Or does it? Maybe it is just a snapshot. What died? What's deeper in the water? What are some of the foods that maybe were here 1,000 years ago but are no longer there? That's also part of the assemblage, survival. And lastly, going on to the fourth frame, I'm going to ask you, and this is probably the most pertinent one in so many ways, how are you in relationship with this experience? How are you in a situation where you are experiencing this? The temperature around you, the sounds, my voice, the pictures, the fact that it's 2D, hunger, nostalgia, relaxed, longing, wondering. Oh gosh, yeah. Freaked out by Miro. I understand, believe me. I'm the observer, the visitor. I'm discovering potential, humility. Really, when we think about WISR and this part of interaction is really the gateway into a different way of understanding, perhaps maybe not understanding is the right word, but conceptualizing our relationships within our experiences. So that right now we might be not really transported to the Great Barrier Reef, but we kind of are. We've got as much as we can do on a Zoom call, but we are in relationship with one another. And so when we go out in the natural world and the real physical world, not this virtual world, which is also the real world, the virtual world is still the real world because we are interacting with this. But as we walk into nature, it is a story that still has to be told. So we find wonder in that moment. But there's also our connection, the touching with all the different species that are there, the air, the temperature, the story of climate change, the story of extraction in certain parts of the world, the story of colonialism, but also the good things, the story of hope, of joy, maybe a carving in a tree, maybe somebody bumped somewhere and left an indent in the nature that we may or may not notice, but it is there, and it's also part of the assemblage. And so it's this opening up of the mind and the imagination, but also of the stories that we don't know that create our experience, and being attuned to what we don't notice and how we're in a relationship as we walk through the woods or walk on the sand or walk in the empty quarter or walk through a mountain range, of all the history that is there and that will become. And this is a different mindset and experiences that allows us to move us away from separation and being part of an assemblage of not just the moment, but everything that's there. So as we move towards the last few minutes of this, I'm going to bring you over to this part on the right, the really big one. And I'm going to ask you, perhaps, we're going to do this as a collage. If I could open it, there we go, as a collage. And in this collage, what we'll do is we're just going to produce knowledge in different ways. Rather, that we could put in notes, we could take maybe the pictures from our wonders, we can again put in emojis, we can do anything we want here in order to create our mark on this experience. Could put in a sleeping emoji, could put an excited one, we can draw, we can do whatever we want. So I, for one, in order to grab this, because this is really going to be the record, I'm going to grab maybe a few of these Post-it notes that really spoke to me. And if, you know, I might copy them again because I wouldn't want to take away the sacredness of other people's writing. But the fact that, you know, the circle of life, I think is absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to pop it into this area here of the collage, if that makes sense. And I just drew a line there, and I don't know why, but I'm going to leave it because that's also part of, oh, here we go. This is also part of experience. Someone drew a heart, and right at the point where I did the circle of life. So that's part of our experience there. I could erase it, I could move it, but this is what happened. This is how it unfolded, and I'm going to respect that. I might take my picture of arches and pop it in there. I'm actually going to just take it and drag it in. And so when we think about these in terms of collages, we think about these different ways that we can enter the creation of knowledge, the way that our experiences really are marks in time, and how this might change depending on where I want to float my picture. This might change depending on my mood. Maybe I'll pick something else tomorrow, but this is a moment in time that we should honor and respect, and that tomorrow will be different. And this leads us also to the idea of sustainability and regeneration, because as we honor this moment in time, we also honor the unique essence of the moment in time, and the fact that it was now, and that it had a past, we had a day, different parts of the world, and a future. So I'm going to be quiet now and maybe invite everybody to take off their mics, talk, react, respond.
What I think has been really nice to observe is that we have removed our human lens, and through this process of wonder and interaction, I know it's been framed with the natural world, but we haven't always been thinking about, well, what can the humans see, do, or think? And so part of this is thinking about how other species respond to each other. It isn't always the human that tells the stories, that holds the narrative, that makes the meanings. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the tools down the left-hand side of the Miro board, that's where you can click and get creative. That's where you find your shapes, your pens, your emojis, and any other tools that you might like to use. And doing this practically with students is great because they physically handle the materials, and so they're in relation with the materials as well.
I'm going to add the scorpion because I saw that outside and it was something else. And so I'm going to share so we can see each other. So we just want to bring this back as well as you spend time putting the collage in terms of getting your responses. This is really a moment to think about how in education we can open up to different ways of thinking. So often sustainability education ends up being recycling or composting or turning off the lights or having a policy about the air conditioning, but really want to open this up towards mindsets and the way we treat each other, the way we interact in and as part of the natural world, the way we can really move beyond some of these tick box sustainability measures that happen in school and start to frame our learning experiences in different ways. They don't all have to be about gallivanting in the woods and being all excited about touching leaves, but certainly opening up to those possibilities of learning coming from the inside. And certainly going up to the possibilities of knowing that well-being and sustainability don't live side by side, they are together. Or that also the way that we treat each other in the natural world, the way that our learning experiences in the classroom allow us to really give space to others. That's really what we're trying to do, just to be able to open up that space to what might happen, what might emerge. Charlotte, would you like to close this out?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was getting creative there with the Miro board. What I think is really beautiful, I'm just going to just share again, is when you use a collage, you are literally gluing and folding and sticking and touching. And so that process of creating with materials helps us to think about relations. And so we're obviously doing this virtually right now, but take that mindset and think about how you might be folding and gluing and bringing together relations with the natural world. What I think has been fascinating to be a part of this Zoom is how much we're all thinking. Our eyes, our ears, our senses have been perhaps more opened by, provoked with nature. So our thinking has taken the human out, responding. We're responding to the world without that human lens. And that is essentially what is going to help us to repair those relationships with the world around us. I feel like I could build on this collage with you all for quite some time. So thank you all for your participation in this Zoom call. And I hope that something here has resonated with you and that maybe there's something that you could take to your practice. Maybe it's the Miro board. Maybe it's cultivating a sense of wonder. Maybe it's thinking about taking children outside to physically experience the weather, different species, so that they can feel and sense and connect with everything around them. Benjamin and I are on LinkedIn. We're pretty active on there. If anyone would like to contact us or ask any further questions about the WISR framework, then we're all ears, because what we're hoping is that we can create a tribe of people who think and feel similarly to us, in that we feel that it's an important time in our world history right now to bring people together, to repair damage, to acknowledge histories, and to move forward for thriving futures for all. So please do contact us. We'd love to continue the dialogue. And I think Fabienne will also be doing some follow-ups in terms of the recording. Is that right, Fabienne?
Yes, so I'll be sharing with everybody the recording and, you know, like follow up. And I just want to thank you both, Charlotte and Benjamin, for a, you know, absolutely wonderful workshop and session. I felt so relaxed and sort of like, you know, I felt like I felt this summer when I was in France watching the sky with my sat in a chair with my dad and the two boys. So I want to thank you for helping recreate that atmosphere. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and I'm sure I can see Maggie and Emanuela echoing what I'm saying. So thank you ever so much to you both.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fabian. And I really appreciate everyone's participation. This was our first time really using Miro in this way. So I appreciate also you helping us as well discover and learn and be curious about what we can do or what we can experience and experiment with.
Yeah,
Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.